Hi, everyone. Welcome. Let's see. Making sure we're live. I think we are. Hi. Thank you so much for joining us at our Speaking of Schools. We have a conversation tonight about the role of business in public education. I'm Beth Lewis, co-founder of Save Our Schools Arizona Network, which is a statewide grassroots 501c3 nonprofit. We are dedicated to research, community engagement, and voter outreach around the importance of supporting public education in Arizona. And I am honored to introduce our panelists for today, two public education champions and leading voices in the Arizona business community. So Lisa Urias is president and CEO of Urias Communications, which provides brand management, PR, and public affairs services to major brands, including the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, APS, Dignity Health, Achieve 60AZ, and various others. Today, Urias Communications is one of the most respected agencies in the U.S. Southwest. Lisa serves on the boards of Greater Phoenix Leadership, the ASU Morrison Institute, Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Arizona Community Foundation, and more. Ron Butler is also joining us. Ron is the Arizona Managing Partner of Ernst & Young, with approximately 30 years of public accounting experience serving regional and global clients. Ron is a past chairman of Arizona Community Foundation and Teach for America Phoenix, and past co-chairman of the P20 Education Committee of Greater Phoenix Leadership. He also serves on the executive board of directors of Expect More Arizona and is chair-elect, as well as the Arizona Science Center, the Barrow Neurological Foundation, the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, and several other wonderful organizations in our state. So you can see why we are so honored to hear from Lisa and Ron today. Thank you both for being here. As we're getting started, I'd like to let you know on Facebook Live that you can post questions in the comments thread, and my SOS Arizona Network teammates will make sure that we'll get to as many of them as we can, as time allows. So let's jump right in. As I have you here, I can't pass up the chance to ask you as business insiders, as the pandemic continues and in fact is worsening, what do you predict will happen to the Arizona economy, and in particular, the revenue that fuels state services like our public schools? Ron, do you want to start?
Sure. I'll go ahead and give it a shot. Thank you for having us. I appreciate it. And hello to everybody out there. As it relates to the economy, I'm concerned. Obviously, I think we all are. Some positives, we did see the market react favorably in the second quarter after the downturn. That will help, but from a long-term perspective throughout the remainder of 2022, as we talk to our clients, there are a number of issues that they're going to face. Supply chain concerns, consumer spending, folks staying home. So when you think about the trickle down of business, it's going to impact a variety of different taxes that they all pay so that we can fund, various programs, including education. So state taxes will be impacted. Our largest base is property tax. That usually is a lagging impact. So I don't believe that we'll see much there. But sales tax, dramatic impact, and I work with the city of Phoenix on some things there. You're going to see that impact fairly significantly that latter half of this year, and maybe some other kind of macro indicators. 40% of the S&P 500 have all pulled their guidance for the remainder of the year, which means they don't believe the profits that they were anticipating are going to end up being there, and as a result, if those profits aren't there, neither will the taxes that they pay, both state, federal, and local. So. I have some concerns, and I think it's time to, really, button down and be prepared for the worst.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Ron said. I don't see any business leader out there anticipating us getting back anytime soon. Most of our large corporate clients have pushed out their kind of reopening or re-engagement dates past Labor Day. And that's just a projection right now. That doesn't mean that they can't all continue to work in some capacity, but as Ron mentioned, the more that happens and the more we push staying at home and staying safe, it does impact certain industries pretty dramatically, and it does impact things like sales tax revenue. And as we know in Arizona, for a lot of our public services, including education, we have a heavy reliance on sales taxes. So that's a big concern.
Yeah, I think many people probably are curious as to whether the 2 weeks that were just, announced through the governor's executive order, whether that will impact the economy. We know a lot of people are waiting for kids to go back to work and childcare in order to they themselves go back to work. So curious as to your thoughts there.
Yeah, the going back to work, for us in our office, we have 300 people all working remotely. Fortunately, we've been pretty resilient through all of this, but we anticipate, it's just going to get a little bit harder. And I do think that's going to put an impact on how many people are able to be employed. You layer on that, the additional unemployment benefit is coming to an end. So that'll have a direct impact on childcare, which I think has a direct impact on, families and their ability to really provide the necessary avenues, whether they're in the classroom or in a summer school or camp program. Those things have now all dissipated, and they'll continue to be impacted as hours are reduced and people are furloughed. So it'll be another interesting 30 days for sure.
Yeah, one of my go-to business sources is called Good Judgment, and it's a website, and it's a conglomeration of thinkers from really all over the country who are experts in a variety of fields, and they have had a history of making very sound predictions about many things that we're facing in the nation and across the world. And as you look at their projections around vaccine and around safe openings of the economy, it's pushed out pretty far. So obviously, so much of what we need to be thinking about is both, how do we make sure that we are equipped for that in the area of education? Obviously, that's going to be really important. I think we need to shore up that online learning space in a way that we haven't yet. And I think the Federal Reserve is going to have to jump in again and continue to fuel some of this economy. As Ron mentioned, the unemployment benefits, other ways of supporting our institutions, our public institutions, and our people.
Yep, and we know that we're getting federal dollars. We're hoping for more federal dollars as this crisis continues. And so I guess the question is, how can we mobilize those resources to close all of these gaps that are being exacerbated because of COVID? So how can we use those resources wisely and maybe in a timely fashion to ensure that our students are learning at best capacity, have access to technology, devices, etc.?
Lisa, I know I've had many of the first opportunities to answer. Do you want to take this one first, and
Sure.
I can pick up on that one?
Tell us how to spend those federal dollars.
So, I had the good fortune of getting a really timely research report today from Common Sense. Common Sense is a nonprofit organization that was started by Elena Lowry, who was a former journalist and managing editor at the Phoenix Business Journal for a number of years. And she started this organization, and she sent me this research in partnership with Boston Consulting Group that did a state-by-state report on the digital divide for America's K-12 students. And what they're finding is that divide is even larger than we previously estimated, and that it really affects our teachers as well. So, just something like 29% of students lack access to the internet. 335,500 students lack adequate access to the internet. 19% of them don't have devices at home for distance learning. 220,500 plus don't have devices at home for distance learning. 56% of students who lack adequate access to the internet are Black, Latinx, or Native American. And so, and then even 10% of teachers lack adequate access to the internet. And so when you look at that, I mean, clearly our focus needs to be around shoring up that digital divide. We cannot expect that we're going to be back to school in full capacity anytime soon. So I think that needs to be a really strong singular focus to make sure that we have those internet resources and device resources to our schools, our teachers. And, if it's overkill, it's overkill. I mean, let's face it, we can recycle things, we can manage things, but this is the world that we live in. And it's also, the new way of learning for so many people. So we just need to get there, focus those resources, I think, in that direction.
Yeah, that's Lisa, that's a great point. In 2018, the state put together its strategic plan around the digital divide and how they would manage through this. It's time to accelerate that plan, use the one-time funding that we have, federal funding that's coming through with $40 million dedicated to this, and push this initiative. And I believe, ask corporations, we have expertise in distributing, laptops and computer systems and IT solutions. We're working, as a firm nationwide, all remotely. We can do this by providing, some support in that process. The interesting thing is, we, at least Ernst & Young for sure, I just answered a question on Friday with respect to, hey, what is your state doing to help get prepared for this potential stay-at-home continuation of education? If you think about where we were in March and really the innovation that was put forward by our school districts, our teachers, our parents to make something happen in a very short period of time, well, we shouldn't be sitting back now. I mean, we have the strategic plan in place. Let's get Hoffman to focus on that. Let's get the information to the districts. It's easy to do in Maricopa and Pima County, easier, but we have 250 school districts that span across the state. How are we going to address this in a timely manner? I think now is the time to really dig deep, ask corporations and business leaders to step up and provide their 2 cents, because we're all doing it. I mean, every business in town of significant size is doing this with thousands of employees.
Yeah, as a teacher who did just recently have to figure this all out in the span of a week, I think we were not shocked by the digital divide. I think we've all kind of been saying that it's there, but I know many of my students were working off of their parents' cell phones and using those kind of as a hotspot. And so there were a lot of kind of sad conversations where they'd say, well, I can join the audio, I can talk to you all in our class meetings, but I can't, there's no video, or I can't do this assignment because I can't access that, right? And so even if people have a cell phone or they have that sort of hotspot Wi-Fi, it's not enough to actually learn.
Yeah, and Beth, I think we can modify probably the classroom experience, just like we're modifying workspaces, so that we can still find times when we can maybe reduce the numbers of people coming in on any given day, and distance, and just work through things carefully. But a lot of the learning is probably going to have to shift online, at least for the months ahead. And how we know with kids, you can't lose time. With business, you can't lose time. So you just have to adapt to it and make sure that you've got things in place to get it done.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you being the voices of reason, because I think that's kind of what we're all thinking, but it takes a little bit of courage to say it. So thank you. I'm going to move.
Yeah, if we don't, I'm sorry, Beth, if we don't say it and plan for it now, right? The old adage is if we fail to plan, then we're going to plan to fail. And that holds true more than ever over the next 30 to 45 days.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think Lisa and I were talking about this earlier, but when we go back in person, educators, we know how to do that, right? Even if we do
Sure.
it in masks or not masks or face shields or not, we're really good at this. But using technology and teaching online for actual grades is a little bit different than what we did fourth quarter. And I think people need to be prepared for that too. And parents don't necessarily know that, and we made it work, but it wasn't quite the same. So moving a little bit past the pandemic, which I know is hard, we're all very focused, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit just about public education and business in a larger sense. So our tagline at Save Our Schools has always been strong school, strong state. And I think the, kind of the subtext there is that education and business, education and the economy are related, right? But we don't always talk about them hand in hand. So can you sort of connect the dots for our audience? How does education drive the economy, property values, et cetera? And K-12, just in general.
You go ahead, Ron.
All right, fantastic. This is, as a byproduct of, public schools in Arizona, rural Arizona, for that matter, and the importance of an education to an individual to bring, economic success to that person individually, then in turn creates economic success for whatever business they go into. And it's just a trickle down, right? So invest at the core. If you invest in an individual, educate them so that they can go get a paying job, pay taxes, provide support to other people along the way, it just feeds on itself. And I'm all about business, and I'm business friendly. And I think the governor's done a nice job with respect to, identifying, attracting, and retaining businesses in Arizona. That said, I think part of that dialogue should be you, business owner, need to invest in the importance of education, because that is your workforce. To the extent we put our money in that, invest in them, educate them, put them in our university system, keep them in our university system, and release them on the workforce in Arizona, we're only going to get better. The hard part for folks to understand is that, that's a generational movement. It doesn't sell well in the newspaper. It's hard to articulate if you're a politician. We have limitations on terms and all that. We never get to see what ultimately happens as a result of it. So I think, for me, you need strong business leaders, strong politicians who are going to collaborate on the long-term focus of this as we think about, where we want Arizona to be. And we talk about it, we say it, but do we really act? And that's where I challenge, my fellow business leaders, and Lisa and I have been working on this, and with many others. There's a lot of great people who are very focused on this. But when you get down to it, do you have the courage to push forward as a group? And I think it tends to splinter for a whole variety of reasons, right? I'm sure I have some clients that are going to see this and listen, and the first thing they're going to do is comment on, I have to pay more taxes, and it's going to impact me. And take a step back and just show them the data. And we've heard the governor talk about the data as a result of the pandemic. The data around education is no different. So, and that should be, and we as business leaders are using data to make decisions every day, whether it's pandemic or non-pandemic related. This data is no different. So pay attention to it. This is a long-term journey that we have to commit to. If that's the Arizona we want. If we don't want that, then let's just be honest with each other and say, we're going to go do something else. We might as well fund correctional facilities and healthcare to care for people who can't care for themselves. And I don't think that's what we want.
Yeah, Ron, he always puts it so beautifully. It's hard to add anything to it, but I would just suggest that, really investment in education is the singular most important thing that we can do as a nation, as a state, as a nation. It's the one thing that will create real opportunity for people to advance and to be able to reach their potential. What we have found, and really I hearken it back to, really 25 years, because as Ron said, these are generational cyclical things that happen. I mean, he and I are both a product of public educations. I think, 90+% of Arizonans rely on this public education system and have for many, many years, probably even more so in the past than they do today. So we have had a strong public education system that we had access to all the way through K through university. And sometimes people forget that public goes through university, and that's important. So that's what's given people like Ron and me the ability to really launch, the ability to really participate fully in our own potential as human beings and our own ability to generate wealth for others, to generate major tax revenue for the state, to be able to be consumers, to be able to do all the things that we say that we want when we talk about a strong economy and a strong society. And the unfortunate part of what we see is over the past, and I again go back to about 25 years, we have disinvested in the public education system. We have systematically focused more on, reducing taxes and shifting tax breaks to things like, business and other things, so that you're creating an increasing gap, a bigger gap between the really uber wealthy and, people who are now coming up through the system. And that's really unfortunate because, again, if we don't think about this in terms of how are we making sure that we are doing what's right for everyone and making sure that our state and our nation are really strong, you cannot systematically take away those investment dollars from your public education system, or you're going to suffer the consequences. And, people say, oh, you've got homeless people, you got that. Well, how did that all start? It all starts when people don't have access to opportunity. And that all starts with a strong public education system.
So I hear you both referencing the very immediate need to invest in education. And I think we all know that we need comprehensive, like a 10, 20-year comprehensive plan, but there is a plan on the table. The Invest in Education initiative is turning in their signatures on Thursday. I know the chamber recently came out in opposition to Invest in Ed, which is a income tax surcharge on individuals making more than $250,000 or married couples making more than $500,000. So I was just interested to hear your thoughts around Invest in Ed. I don't know who wants to take it first, but eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
Well, I always quote Ron when I talk about Invest in Ed. So I guess I can start, but we had this discussion at Greater Phoenix Leadership because the language was going to go on the ballot about whether you were pro or con, and the Arizona Chamber asked us at Greater Phoenix Leadership if we would jump onto an opposition to it, because there's a narrative that occurs with some of the business leaders that this is going to be bad for attracting businesses to the state, economic development attraction. And, our position was twofold. Number one, we have never really put forward a very clear platform around what it is that we want. We know in our P20 committee that Ron led for us for many years, we know that we need $1 billion in the system. We know that we need a steady stream of income. Now, the question for a lot of people was, how do you get there? And we had an idea around, a combination of property, sales, and income tax combined to get there that we thought would probably be a more stable kind of way to put money into the system. But we never put it out there. We were never able to get it over the finish line and say, this is what we want. And we weren't able to work with the governor's office around that kind of platform that we could maybe push through the state legislature. So the Invest in Ed initiative is there. We did not oppose it at GPL. I actually will support it. I'm going to vote for it because I do not believe that this is some sort of, the sky is falling dangerous bill, our initiative. And part of that comes from Ron, because as one of the managing partner of one of the largest tax accounting firms in the state and country, you know, he's made it clear to me and to many others that this is not a big deal if we raise taxes on people making a lot more money. I'll let him go into the details of that. But I think that's really important for us to communicate as business leaders that, you know, while some of us may not think it's the best thing, it isn't a bad thing. It's a way we're going to get more money into the system. We need to do that. And it's probably the only way it will pass with the voters, because anything that goes to property taxes and other areas just doesn't seem to poll very well.
Well, you have really touched on a complicated subject, and I'll try and do my best in a couple minutes to provide some perspective. Lisa has stood by me on this, and we've talked about it at great length at Greater Phoenix Leadership and in other coalitions on what is possible. And it immediately gets watered down because it gets hard. You know, how does, and I know even in this group, we've had conversations around, you know, what's the right mix? You know, should everybody have to pay? You know, we thought about sales tax as a, you know, potential other opportunity, but that's not sustainable. So that's the other thing. It can't be one time, has to be sustainable over the long term. And as a result, I think it has to be multifaceted, right? It can't be one or the other. It has to be more than one thing over time. So when I look at it, and we present those options, you know, to politicians, to our legislators, to other business leaders, it immediately gets, you know, frowned upon because we can't sell that. Okay, well, what's easiest to sell? If you all, as business leaders, can't find a way, a lot of smart people around the table, and there's plenty of folks passionate about this. And this is Ron Butler's view. Let's make sure it's not an Ernst & Young view. This is Ron Butler's view as a person who would be impacted by this. And I'm happy that it would be impacted, because that means that, you know, I've done something right, that the public school and our state universities didn't fail me. They supported me through all of this. So you know what? If I'm going to make an investment in anything I have, I'm going to invest that money in education. And I said this back in January at the State of the State for Education. I said, go ahead and tax me, because I know over time that would be the best investment I can make for my firm, for our people, and for our kids. And those, if that isn't enough, and when we talk about business attraction, if it's not enough for our CEOs who come into our community and utilize our resources and get the opportunities to do business here, then we shouldn't, and I'd steal this from Lisa, we shouldn't have those as residents and citizens of our state. And let's be clear, you know, I think there's a mixed bag of CEOs who are either based here or not based here, may not impact them anyway. It's going to impact me. But you know what? I already contribute money to a variety of educational institutions, my time, my energy, to try and break this, you know, cycle of underinvestment. We're doing it. All of these people we talk about are supporting this are already doing that. They're already putting their hard-earned dollars after tax into the system to hopefully get some return. So, you know, I frankly, if we do it and we push, and I'll vote for it, I think it's a wake-up call for people to then stop, you know, put all of their differences aside and work harder at coming up with a solution that the legislators and parents and teachers would all accept. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all going to pay a little bit in this. If we want to start, and Lisa's going to pay more, and I'm going to pay more, and anybody who's had some level of success is going to pay more up front, I think it's only right that we then look back and say, hey, how else can we get this from a sustainable source over the long term so that it isn't, you know, detrimental to any, you know, economic development that we want as a state.
I'm going to pay more, but not as much as Ron.
I don't know about that.
No, but one of the things that we talk about too, and Beth, we referenced this earlier, that what is economic development? It's not just attracting people to the state, which we do very well, frankly. We attract a lot of people to Arizona, and I always ask that question, you know, who do we want to attract? And sometimes we attract a lot of older retirees who come here because they want to enjoy the warmer weather and the climate, and they can buy a home that's more affordable. but we also want to attract, smart, dynamic business that can come in here and make an impact. But the fact of the matter is that economic development is investing in your own people. And when you invest in your people and they're able to have a successful business, they're able to run a successful business, they're able to be great employees, they're able to plug into all the jobs that we have available and have a running start, and they're able to respond to the needs of new businesses that come in here. That's economic development too. So we need to think of this more holistically than just a one-way street.
Yeah, Beth, can I make another comment? Because Lisa, she gets my mind going on this topic, and I do think that the governor, ACA, they have really turned around our reputation as a state in a place to do business, and I think that's wonderful. And we've said, hey, we have excellent universities. We have a phenomenal university sitting here in Phoenix at Arizona State University, and I said to you all, I can say that as a Wildcat, and I think that's important. I believe our other universities are doing everything they can to be successful and produce the right level of caliber for the companies we have. We want more businesses here. We suffer as a metropolitan area in those large businesses, the ones who pay a lot more in taxes, the Fortune 1000. We have by far the fewest Fortune 1000 companies as a city than any comparable city you can find in the top 15. And so that tells me something. It's like, okay, well, we're more innovative. Yeah, I think we've been very good at that, of having businesses here. Think about GoDaddy and Bob Parsons, what a success story he has been. And guess what? He cuts large checks every year to support our community, whether it's health and human services and the homeless, whether it's education. He picks where he wants to support. And those are his after-tax dollars that he's putting to work. The more people we have like that, through innovation, finding the right folks. Heidi Janenga at WebPT, another great example of somebody who started a business and continues to give back to her community. That is what we're looking for. So you want to come to our state, we want you here. We're going to give you the talent, but you're going to invest in the seedlings to grow the rest of the talent and bring this equity across our public education system so that we can continue to foster that development and bring more people to the workforce that employers want. To me, we're getting by just because a lot of hard work and maybe a little luck, but we need to find some sustainable solution that shows, businesses why they're here and why they invest here.
Well, and I think, you're both here because you have powerful voices and powerful platforms, and you're so willing to be courageous. But I think, we have some questions from the audience kind of coming in saying, well, okay, so how come we don't hear from more business leaders, or how could, maybe in a more constructive way, like how could we encourage other executives to be more vocal and, I guess, share your philosophy of giving back to not only to our state and our community, but also to the system that brought them up, AKA public education in many situations. So how do we do that?
Lisa, do you want to give them a little perspective, for the folks that are viewing this on the community leaders group? And I know you touched a little bit on it, but I think that's important because there are a lot of passionate folks, and maybe a few of your words on that would be great.
Sure. Yeah. So we do know that there are a lot of business leaders like Ron and me who care very deeply about the public education system and want it to be better and are willing to invest. Many of you know Jim Swanson, and he was directed by Governor Ducey when Governor Ducey first took over as governor to run the Classrooms First initiative. And, Jim Swanson, the CEO of Kitchell Corporation, took 2 years, almost 2 years out of his, position to do a deep dive into the public education system. And honestly, I kind of wonder if maybe Governor Ducey and some other folks didn't expect him to come out and say, oh, well, there's a lot of inefficiencies. He's a CPA as well by trade. And, oh, we need to fix this. We need to fix that. And Jim came out going, we need $1 billion. We're $1 billion in the hole. And, I love that about Jim because he has been so passionate since that time. And there are a lot of people like that. On the Expect More CEO Council, I would say, 90% of us fall into that camp. On the P20 committee at GPL, 90% of us fall into that camp. Now, we do face obstacles because some people have a sense that if you ever go against what, a sitting governor might have in their platform or their policy design, that somehow that is going against them. And what I keep trying to emphasize, being a granddaughter of a politician, is that they're public servants. Politicians are not kings, they are public servants, and they are really there to respond to the community and to the will of the people. And so I do believe that we can find more voices. And I know Ron and I have talked about this, that we as Latino business leaders would be willing to go out and maybe start, pulling on some of the other Latino and African-American business leaders who we know, and many others, to say, we support more investment in our public education system, and we do not believe that this is this Invest in Ed, for example, is a problem for us. We need to just find those voices and just move forward. And we've talked about it many times, like, how do we form another group? But we just need to do it. And I think with your help, SOS and Invest in Ed folks, with your help, helping us design kind of a little platform around what we want to support and pushing it forward, we can do that.
Well, I'll use this as an opportunity to kind of preview, something we've been working on, and Lisa touched on it. Right? We had the Expect More Arizona CEO Council, Business Alliance Council, where we're giving them readouts on the state of education, where we need their help, and I think that's all great. That's wonderful. We also have business leaders who sit on Teach for America, and Beth, and providing guidance to SOS and having a conversation about these topics. Where we kind of lack, I believe, and one of the things that we're working on as chair-elect of Expect More Arizona is to bring some more muscularity to the education voice, collaborate more deliberately with all of the voices, because part of the issue is I think we become splintered on the messaging, and sometimes that messaging is not quite what we like, but maybe we should live with it anyway. I think we need more of that. If we bring some more muscularity to the voice, where people want to be part of something bigger, with a tip of the spear being the education voice, I think the support that you'll see from the rest of business leaders, without being left out, because they don't want to be left out in the conversation. More to come on this topic, but that's the focus for us going forward. You all will be part of the conversation, and we're going to compromise just like most politicians do today effectively. Compromise on what's possible, and then exceed everybody's expectations. And it's long time overdue, and I'm excited. Lisa is obviously part of that, and I'm excited to push that forward. And you mentioned Jim Swanson and others. They're out there, and I think it's about time to really mobilize harder. And if this passes, and when it passes, how about that? When it passes, guess what? You're going to get a lot of people who want to sit around the table now to find a way to become sustainable with multiple levers that we can all pull and collectively say, hey, we're all in this together. It's just not us or them. It's we.
I can't wait for that moment.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. When we were speaking the other day, Lisa, we talked a bit about corporations in Arizona, all over the country, getting together and drafting statements around the Black Lives Matter movement, and really doing some soul searching, some digging around how their corporations could be more reflective of people in their state and more diverse. And we started talking about the concept of equity here in Arizona, and making sure that corporations that are issuing those statements are also doing the work of equity in our schools. Lisa, I was wondering if you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting time, and it is a very interesting opportunity for SOS and the Invest in Ed movement. So part of this conversation came around because every organization out there has been looking to either, issue a statement or find a voice or do better. And, that's all really important. It's very important, and it's great to see. I've never seen the kind of response to this issue before among corporate leadership. They all want to do better, which has been really encouraging. So, I've been working with a lot of them just around looking at their statements and talking with them about what they might do. And, some of what we talk about within those conversations is, you need to start first by learning and then looking internally at your own organization, because, that really matters. You can't just do a macro view and say, oh yeah, we have, 25% minority hires. Well, where are they? Are they in your call center, or are they at every level of your organization? And so that's something that I think all of them are doing. In fact, in the Arizona Republic, I helped Adam Goodman, another really great guy, who wrote a column. He did a deep dive. He sort of took my advice, and then he sent me this column, and we worked on it together, and it's really great. It'll be running in Saturday's Arizona Republic. But what we went to from there was, now remember that Black Lives Matter isn't just about police brutality. It's about inequity. It's about inequity and a lack of investment in our schools, a lack of investment in our health systems, a lack of investment in our affordable housing. And so, when it comes to education, that's a place where all of us can land. And I think if we take this opportunity to say invest in ed is a way to drive more equity for our communities, that's a great message. And maybe there's a challenge that Invest in Ed can make with SOS to say, are you with us? Do you believe that this will drive more equity for our students and for our schools? And, if you signed on to I Support Black Lives Matter movement, how about this? I mean, how does this not align with that movement? It absolutely aligns. And so Warren Stewart, Pastor Stewart, and I had a conversation. He had a piece published in the Chamber Business News that they ran. So how is it that they can now come out against Invest in Ed? I think those are the kinds of things that you just need to call them on and be sure that you're bringing that up to the forefront of people's minds, that you can't be for Black Lives Matter and then say, but I don't want to pay for education. So those are just some thoughts around that.
Yeah, the only comment that I would provide on this topic is, we put together, as you all know, with the Expect More Arizona and the Center for the Future of Arizona, right, the progress meter, the Arizona Education Progress Meter, which is was collaboration of over 200 entities and municipalities coming together to say, hey, what is it we want to accomplish? And that gives us the dials to watch. And we can see, we can break down the data by county, by town, by school district, and see where we're performing and where we're not. Then ask the hard questions as to why. And dive into the details, right? Again, we're going to focus on data. Just dive into the data and address what's happening there. Well, that population, again, because we haven't provided the right level of economic development to get the workforce educated in all areas of Phoenix, Tucson, or rural Arizona, when you look at the data, you say, okay, why are we falling behind here? What is it? Class size, teacher pay, infrastructure? You can go down the list and keep it simple, and then ask our legislators and others, and that many of them have been very good about it, go into those schools and just take a visit. Just go, if you're from Arizona and you went to school here, go back to your old school and see what it looks like. It's not going to look like it did when you went to school there. We have allowed things to happen and create these inequities, and yet focused on ESAs and other items to say we're gonna focus our attention on school choice, when the reality is we have to even the playing field for everybody. And so let's find those dollars that are of organizations that are underperforming, schools are underperforming, and find ways to help them. Teacher education, whatever it might be. I spend so much time with Teach for America, who's solely focused on, low income schools and putting teachers in there and trying to attract and retain them and provide the support those schools need. I look for the day, I long for the day when we don't need Teach for America, right? When we have enough teachers and we've elevated the people to contribute to their schools and their districts in a way that is you know, closing that gap that currently exists and is getting wider. And that's just not, it's not fair. It's not the Arizona that I want. It's not the Arizona I grew up in. I'm sure of that, but it's quickly becoming that.
Yeah, we had a wonderful volunteer, Judith, who mentioned that Invest in Ed is, you know, what did she say? She said it's an emergency infusion of dollars. Without something happening now, the problem is becoming almost insurmountable. So to your point, like, it's a critical first step. And luckily, the way the funding works, I think so much of it is going towards teacher salary. And we know teachers are the #1, you know, indicator of a student's educational outcome. And so the more quality teachers we can attract to the profession and retain, the better off everybody's going to be. So
Yeah, the key word there is profession, right? This is a profession. This is a profession that many people have sacrificed time and energy to contribute to. And now we've asked them to contribute and not pay them. That doesn't happen in my business. I know it doesn't happen in Lisa's business. It's just not, it's not right. It's not fair. And so there's an appropriate level of attention I think we've paid to it, but that's only the tip of the iceberg because we've only moved up one spot in teacher pay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Sorry, I'm getting questions now. So I think I want to wrap up and I want to respect your time, but I would love to hear, maybe as like a parting thought, question, maybe one aspect of education that you feel could be improved, like maybe more quickly, since we've focused on a lot of the problems. What are some more like quick turnarounds that could be made within education that maybe do require funding or don't, regardless of the pandemic, that you feel would benefit the K-12 system on the whole?
Well, I mean, you know, we as business leaders don't know as much about the public education system as a whole as you do. And so I always say, you need to tell us. But at the same time, I think Ron and I probably have a little bit more understanding of it because we have spent a lot of time over the last few years just really trying to learn more and to be better about advocating for more funding in public education. Obviously, I think a big issue is making sure our teacher salaries are up. I know the governor wanted to move to the 20% increase. I don't know whether or not that's happening now under the current circumstances, but hopefully we can do that. I know we have a lack of math teachers. That's a big issue, and it's a real problem because it's critical to any sort of advancement, no matter what you do in life. It's really critical to have those fundamental math skills, and we know that you build on those blocks. So, you know, and then just getting more teachers into the classroom, attracting and retaining teachers. I think, Beth, you have mentioned us the number of teachers that are going to be retiring, and considering the current crisis, maybe sooner rather than later. So, you know, teachers is probably the biggest thing that we need to focus on. Teacher salaries, teacher attraction, teacher retention, and then some specifically within certain areas like math, where there are, you know, many schools that don't even have qualified math teachers right now. So I think that's probably where I would start.
Yeah, those are all great comments, Lisa. I'm going to take it maybe one step back, kind of a macro perspective on this, because what's one thing that will have an immediate impact that won't cause us to fall any further is my ask of, you know, our elected officials, leave education alone. I think the governor's done a great job from a surplus standpoint, building up some coffers for, you know, and he's always said for the rainy day. Well, guess what? It's pouring right now. So let's focus on keeping things the way they are. Take the money that we need, that we get the one-time infusion on, get that to rural Arizona, get that to the school district so that they don't lose, you know, funding as a result of attendance and other numbers, and, you know, homeschooling and other things are going to pull those people out of the classroom. keep that in place and continue to invest. Don't let us fall backwards as, well, everybody has to give a little. No, we've given more than enough. And I think we have had some, I think we're in, we as the education community, I think are, hopefully in a different perspective or a different light for the governor that, I think that's detrimental to then ask our educators to do even more with even less. We're already doing more with less. So let's not do it. So that's my immediate ask. And then I would say, get planning, put the money towards planning for, more delays, more irregular learning, get kids in the classroom, rotate them, and pay the teachers to do that, because it's going to get harder for you all. So give them a little more money so that they're innovative, supportive in a trying time, and ultimately have the energy to keep doing this, because I know it's hard, and I appreciate them.
And I just want to add that, Beth, from SOS perspective, we know that private school tax credit is a real challenge. And now with the Supreme Court ruling that happened, the fact that we're kind of opening even more floodgates to take public dollars to put them into private interest. I just don't believe at all that's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars to put them into private school interest. So, we have to find a way to continue to push with you to stop that.
All right, I have to say one more thing, because see, Lisa, you do this debate talk. Beth and everybody hang with me for a second. So I am vehemently against that, and I'll tell you why. Again, that creates more inequity, right? Because we don't have the schools that we need, and we've seen them be built and put in places that it gets the diversity numbers up. But it isn't systemic across the state. So I'll give you an example. Right, growing up in San Manuel, Arizona, wonderful superintendent there, Julie Dale Scott. She's doing less with more every year with declining population. Guess what? There is no public charter school or any private school that those kids can go to. That's all they have. So why are we giving money to something that doesn't have 100% access to everybody?
Exactly.
That is the definition of inequity, right? So I'll apologize for I'll probably get a lot of nasty grams on that, but I truly believe there's a better way to put the money to work than just that.
Couldn't agree with you more. So I just want to thank you both on behalf of our network of volunteers who are watching on Facebook. I know I'll speak for myself, but it's refreshing to hear the honesty that's coming out of your mouths. It's refreshing to hear the level of respect for teachers as professionals. I know that you as business leaders are going through a lot right now, and we as teachers are going through a lot in terms of the mental stress. And I think our state will be a lot stronger if we can all find ways to work together. And honestly, this conversation gives me a lot of hope, and I hope that's true for everybody out there. So I truly want to thank you both for being here and for being refreshing voices.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Beth.
Thank
it's
you.
A pleasure. We look forward to working together more.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Take care. Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Talk soon.
Bye-bye.